My name is Claire. I was never afraid of being alone. After college, I moved into a quiet suburban house in New England. Small, cozy, with a garden, floor-to-ceiling windows, and creaky floorboards, which I found charming at first. My parents moved to Florida and I stayed behind, with my habits, my blanket on the sofa, and my cup of tea before bed. I was 26, working remotely and not looking for adventure. I was looking for peace. The first warning signs were so subtle that I didn't even notice them. The keys I usually left on the nightstand by the entrance were once found in the kitchen. I chalked it up to absent-mindedness. Another time, the book I was reading before bed was suddenly lying open in the middle, not face up as I had left it. Maybe it was the wind from the window. Maybe I just forget how I leave things. Yes, that's what I thought. But then there were the nights. I woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling, as if someone was watching me. Not a noise, not a light, not a nightmare, but a gaze. I lay motionless, peering into the darkness, listening to the silence, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination. Once I turned on the light, the room was empty. I walked around the house, checked the doors and windows. Everything was locked. I exhaled, took a sip of water, and went back to bed. And the next morning, the bedroom window was open. It was ajar, just a couple of inches, as if someone didn't want me to notice it right away. But I knew I had closed it. I always close the windows at night, especially when it's cold. I couldn't have forgotten. From that day on, I began to notice more. The milk I had opened the day before was almost empty in the morning. A candy bar wrapper, one I definitely hadn't bought, was lying in the trash. Once I heard a creak in the hallway while I was in the shower. I froze, covered in soap, listening as someone slowly walked past my door. But when I ran out, there was no one there. Only drops of water on the floor and my own reflection in the mirror, frightened and confused. I told Sarah, my friend from work, about it. She suggested that I might have a raccoon or that someone might have broken into the house while I was away, but I knew the house was always locked. I live alone. No one could have gotten in. No one. On the fourth night, I decided not to go to bed. I sat on the sofa with a mug of coffee wrapped in a blanket and waited. The hours dragged by agonizingly slowly. At 2:30, I heard a step creak. The one by the stairs. I turned off the light. My heart was pounding. I held my breath. Again, a rustle. Quiet footsteps as if barefoot, very cautious. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to breathe as quietly as possible. The footsteps stopped, and then there was a barely audible click, as if the closet door upstairs had opened. Then, silence. In the morning, I found breadcrumbs on the floor that hadn't been there the day before. Someone was coming out of hiding. Someone was living in my house. I bought a hidden camera the very next day, small, almost invisible, with night mode. I installed it in the corner of the bedroom, pointing the lens toward the closet. I put the second one in the hallway, by the stairs. That night, I tried to sleep, but anxiety gripped my chest. Questions swirled in my head. What if he knows? What if he sees the cameras? What if he comes back? When I turned on the recording in the morning, my hand was shaking. There was nothing on the first tape, just me tossing and turning. On the second tape, at 2:41 a.m., the closet door slowly opened. A figure slipped out of the darkness. A man, pale, thin, with bags under his eyes and long arms. He moved silently, like a shadow. He stopped by the bed and leaned over me. I was asleep. He smelled my hair. Then he straightened up, walked into the hallway, and disappeared from the frame. I dropped the phone. I was shaking. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. He was in the house all this time, while I slept, ate, lived. He watched. I didn't go to the police. I left. I grabbed my bag, keys, everything I could, and drove to my parents' house. I slept on the couch without turning on the light. I took the cameras with me. I showed them to my dad. He watched them too. Then he looked at me and said, "We'll call the police. Don't worry." But when we returned with the officer the next day, there was no one in the house. No cameras, no traces, no crumbs, no smell. It was as if no one had ever lived there. The window was closed, the closet was empty. The officer nodded, took my statement, and left. I stayed at my parents' house. But every night when I wake up, I listen. I'm no longer sure I'm alone. And every time I look up at the window, I check to see if it's closed. Because once, it was open.
My name is Laura. I moved into this house a little over a month ago. It's a small, one-story cottage on the outskirts of town where the backyard gives way to lawns overgrown with wild clover and mint, and beyond that, a sparse forest. It seemed that I had finally found peace, silence, morning mists, and no neighbors peering over the fence. Perfect. Especially after my not-so-pleasant divorce and the subsequent months spent in a concrete box with thin walls. At first, I felt almost happy, waking up with the first rays of the sun, drinking coffee on the porch, hearing the wind rustling in the dry leaves, no cars, no voices, just me in this house. And then, the little things started. A broken stem in the flower bed, a plastic bottle lying by the fence. I definitely didn't throw it there. Several times I found shoe prints in the damp earth, and they weren't mine. I tried not to dwell on it. I told myself that teenagers had snuck through the backyard, maybe looking for a place to smoke, or dogs, or even deer, which they say are everywhere around here. But then there were the scratches. On the wooden fence, on the inside, as if someone had run a nail or a knife along it. 3 thin, deep lines running down the boards. I ran my fingers over the wood. They were still fresh. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me freeze, and yet I blamed it all on teenagers again. I set up cameras, inexpensive ones, but with night vision. One at the back door, the other at the corner of the house, facing the garden. A week passed. I checked the recordings from time to time, but all I saw was the wind rustling the tree branches or the neighbor's cat creeping along the fence. Until one evening. I was watching the footage, lazily fast-forwarding it, and suddenly, a freeze frame. At 16 minutes into the second night, the camera jerked as if it had lost focus slightly, and there was a silhouette, tall. A black shadow stood near the kitchen window, motionless, just standing there. I rewound it, stopped it, zoomed in. No face, no details, just a blurred outline, as if someone had breathed on the lens. It was there for a minute, and then it disappeared. I didn't sleep until morning. I closed the curtains and held my phone in my hand, as if that would make it easier. But calling the police seemed silly at the time. No crime, no threats, just a shadow. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe it was a camera error. Yes, That's it. But from that day on, I began to live in fear. Everything seemed suspicious. A strange creak from the attic, a rustle outside the window. Once I even screamed when I heard something fall in the basement. It was just an old box, but my heart was in my throat. A few days later, I came home from work later than usual. It was already dark. I put the key in the lock and froze. The door was unlocked. A crack. Black. Narrow. I remembered clearly. I had closed the door. Closed it and checked it. I didn't go in. I took a step back. I called the police. They arrived quickly, in 10 minutes. 2 officers walked through the house and called another one with a flashlight. They found traces. Dirty footprints on the floor in the hallway, smudges on the carpet. Nothing was missing. No stolen items, no signs of a break-in. One of the officers, McCarthy I think, asked if the house had a crawl space. I showed him the hatch in the pantry. He opened it and shone his flashlight down. It was empty. But his face changed. He paused, then went out into the yard. When he came back, he said only, "You'd better leave for a couple of days until we figure this out." I went to stay with my friend Carol. She lived 40 minutes away from me. All that time, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Not openly, not obviously, but as if I could feel their gaze on my skin. 3 days later, Officer McCarthy called me. He said there was nothing new, no leads, no arrests. He advised me to install additional lighting and, if possible, get a dog. I didn't go back to that house. A week later, I put it up for sale. Several agents looked at it. No one found anything strange. One said he had heard that someone was hiding in the basements of other people's houses in the neighborhood, but the police hadn't caught anyone. Maybe it was the same person. Now I live in an apartment. High floor. Balcony overlooking the city, not the forest. No one can just look in the windows. Sometimes I catch myself looking out the window in the middle of the night, just to check. And every time before I pull back the curtain, I hold my breath. Sometimes I think I see a silhouette, on the street, by the lamppost, indistinct, barely discernible. And then I think, what if he wasn't the first? What if he never left?
My name is Kevin. I'm 28 years old. I live alone in a small house on the outskirts of the suburbs, 40 minutes from the city centre. Few people ever come here by accident. The roads are winding and navigation systems go haywire, especially in winter. That suited me fine. I've never been a social person. I work remotely, shop online, and spend my evenings reading or watching old thrillers. Quiet, predictable. Until one evening. It was a normal Friday. I finished work around 9 and, not particularly wanting to cook, ordered food. Pizza, 2 sauces, soda. The app confirmed the order and sent the name of the delivery person. Ricky, delivery in 35 minutes. I was busy in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. "Delivery," said a voice, male, confident, with a slight hoarseness. I went over and opened the door peephole. A man in a delivery uniform, yellow jacket, bag with a logo, box in his hands. Everything looked normal. But when I asked his name, he said, "This order is for Jared, right?" I froze. "No," I said. "I'm Kevin. I have a different order, pizza." "Oh, that's strange." He shrugged. "Maybe the app got something mixed up. Can I open it? I'll just check the address. Maybe I'm at the wrong place." He leaned slightly toward the peephole. Too close. I didn't open it. "No, if it's not my order, take it back. I'll wait for mine." Silence. Then he spoke again, a little more quietly. "I just want to clarify." "No, go away," I said sharply. He stood there for a few seconds and, judging by the sound of his footsteps, left. Or so I thought. The real delivery guy arrived 10 minutes later. A different person, real pizza. I ate, sat down on the sofa, turned on the TV, and everything would have been fine if it weren't for the click of a camera. I have a simple video surveillance system, the front door, the backyard, and the kitchen window. No tricks, just 3 cameras synchronized with my phone. I opened the app. The screen showed the kitchen window. The same man in the delivery jacket was standing right next to the glass. He stood silently, looking inside. His face was partially hidden by his hood, but I could see something in his gaze, not curiosity, but anticipation, as if he was checking to see if I was asleep, to see if I would open the door. He stood there for 3 minutes. Then he left, slowly, without turning around. I listened to the sounds of the house all night. First, the wind, then raindrops, then footsteps, or was it just my imagination? I didn't call the police. Admitting it to myself was scarier. The next morning, I found a paper bag on my doorstep. Inside was a container of noodles and tea in a cup. No note, no receipt. I hadn't ordered anything. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a neighbor had ordered something. Although the nearest house is 100 meters away. A day later, there was a new order. This time, it was pizza, and again, it wasn't me.
I checked my account. Everything was fine. No orders, no charges. But the food kept coming, persistently. Once, there was a whole bag from the store, milk, bread, butter. Almost like my usual purchases. Almost. I called support. They told me that everything was fine with my account. It was possible that someone was ordering by hand and paying in cash, or through another platform. The calls started the following week, one at 1 in the morning, the second at around 5 in the morning, just silence. No beeps, no hang-ups. Someone was listening. I couldn't sleep. I installed additional cameras. Someone walked through the snow near the house, leaving a trail of footprints along the facade. My footprints were mixed in with theirs when I went outside with a flashlight. But his footprints were bigger, heavier. He was walking in circles. I called the police after I found a handprint on the window, a clear palm print, as if someone had leaned against it, trying to look inside. The officer inspected the area, noted that nothing critical had happened, and advised me not to panic. I boarded up the basement. I installed an additional lock, but I still woke up from the slightest noise, from the cold, as if the door was ajar, from the feeling that someone was nearby. I couldn't take it anymore. I wrote to my boss and took the weekend off. I called my friends Dave and Jenna, a couple who live 4 hours away. They didn't mind. I packed my things. I went out, locked all the locks, checked the alarm, and got in the car. Almost at the city limits, my phone vibrated. "Your order has been delivered. Thank you for choosing us." My heart beat faster. I opened the app. My motion camera, the one by the door, had just sent a notification. I clicked on it. In the video, it was him again. Same jacket, same bag. He leaned toward the door, listened. Then, slowly, without rushing, he put something on the doormat. Then he stood up and pulled the handle. He didn't break it. He didn't steal anything. He just checked, as if he knew I wasn't there. The recording ended, and I suddenly realized he always knew. When I was home, when I left, what I ordered, where I slept, and maybe he wasn't a delivery man at all.